Here are my predictions, my two predictions on how the Loki series will end. My prediction, or my first prediction, now this is in keeping in mind that if the TVA turns out to be the good guys, that if everything that they are telling us, that they are here to preserve the sacred timeline, is all legit and on in the up and up, and no other motives, and they truly do want to keep balance in a one timeline, kind of like our timeline. If given that scenario, that again they are the good guys, then I believe that Loki is going to have to sacrifice himself and re-enter the timeline at the point that before he took that Tesseract, to be able to have the events that we see in the Infinity Saga ultimately play off. Now, I don't know if this will entitle or have to have Loki have his memory erased of everything that he went through in the Loki series, but it will be a nice way to have that turn out if that is the case. Or having him willingly, knowingly that he, at the end of his life, he will get his throat snapped by Thanos on board that ship, then he is going to have to live in that moment, a la or similar to how many theories, even though I find those to be ridiculous, that Steve Rogers went back in time with Peggy Carter and he allowed the events to transpire the way they had to preserve the outcome of Endgame. I find that hard to believe on Cap's part because of his moral compass. And in having the idea floating around that Steve Rogers will allow all that stuff to happen to Bucky and all those atrocities, and almost like, even though I know he knows that they ultimately win and Bucky ultimately gets redeemed, and having that all play out in that way, even though he could step in and kind of cut that corner, is kind of bothersome to me. But maybe Loki in that same manner, and it fits Loki a lot more, honestly, in his character and the way Loki is, for him to say, you know what, this is my destiny. My destiny is to bring the good out of everyone else, to bring the hero out of everyone else, to bring the hero out of my brother. Because honestly, if it wasn't for Loki and how mischievous he was to put Thor through all those obstacles, we got the Thor from Ragnarok and Infinity War, and ultimately, even though he had we had Fat Thor in Endgame, but Loki was a integral part in having that Thor be the Thor that we got. So maybe his memory doesn't have to be wiped out, and he goes back into that timeline to just make sure that the timeline plays out. In option B, though, it's saying that, or in this scenario, it would be the TVA is the ultimate bad, like everyone is suggesting, or many people are suggesting that they are the new baddies of Phase 4, and that they had a hand in that. They wanted, Loki to fail in Avengers 1. Ultron was a part of it. Ego, the Living Planet, they needed him out of the way. They needed Thanos out of the way. They needed Tony Stark and Captain America to grow old and Tony to die, Black Widow to die. Like, this was all part of their sinister plan to maybe bring Galactus. Maybe they're serving a higher power, which in this case would be Galactus, that's been hinted on at. Or maybe they are the ultimate bad, where they were pulling the strings so that the timeline that they, or the future that they deem worthy enough to happen, is ultimately allowed to happen through their own doing. And if this scenario plays out where the TVA is the big baddie, then I think we are looking at a broken timeline that is spreading and will lead to the events in phase 4, in phase 5, that will be the next catalyst for storytelling under Marvel. If you think about it, I think I might be wrong, and let me know down in the comments, but I think the Loki series was meant to be the first Disney Plus to be produced. And if you look at it in that sense, that the Loki series would come out first, and then you had a broken timeline theory, or at least what I'm insinuating, it makes sense, right? Given what we know about Spider-Man, the movie, the Spider-Man 3 movie, the new Doctor Strange movie, Thor Love and Thunder, what we know about that movie, it almost fits kind of too perfect. And I'm debating whether that might not be the best scenario. Now, just encompassing this, the thing that we know for a fact is that Kevin Feige said that he wants us to still focus, or put most of our focus in the movies that are coming out in theaters. And just like we saw in WandaVision and in Winter Soldier, these seem to be self-contained stories that, yes, might lead or suggest to a big bad, or might kind of evolve a story or pay off later on in phase 4. But just like Wanda, when we saw WandaVision, it basically all, from the moment she got to the empty house lot, to the moment where that reality suspended, nothing changed, nothing was different, nothing was altered. The only thing that was altered was obviously her experience in this whole thing, and we got White Vision that ultimately will pay off, hopefully, in the future. Same thing with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. By the end, we started off with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and the only thing that really changed was that we got a new Captain America and the Winter Soldier, even though it should have been Captain America and Bucky Barnes, because it was a redemptive story for both of them. And I feel that Bucky just kind of got thrown off to the side, and they focused on Sam, which, if you liked it, cool. But I just feel like Bucky was just thrown to the side and not given the respect he deserves, even though he was the closest childhood friend of Steve Rogers and should have had a little bit more dignity, or a little bit more focus in the show. But anyways, I'm digressing too much. The point is that story was self-contained, and at the end of it, nothing really changed. So it might be that nothing really changed, which that, in that sense, it leads more to theory A than theory B. Because if theory B happens, where the TVA is bad and we have a broken timeline, I mean, that changes everything. Then everything becomes part on the board, even the X-Men, Fantastic Four. And if you have a broken timeline, given what we know about the comics and how they've handled that storyline, it leaves a lot to be presented. And that would, again, it if you put it in that scenario, it makes a ton of sense. But that's just my theories. These are the two ways I think the Loki series will end. But I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you think option A is viable, option B is viable, or what are some of your ideas or thoughts on how the Loki series will end? Let me know those thoughts down in the comments, and like always, until next time.